from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, kicking off 1970 with magical mayhem, to Star Trek, the animated series boldly expanding sci-fi animation, to the Scooby-Doo show perfecting the mystery formula for a generation. Here are every famous 1970s cartoon, presented in the exact order they first hit TV screens. The Plastic Man comedy Pow and Adventure Show. Wrapping up the 1970s on September 22, 1979, this ABC series featured the stretchy DC superhero in 35 segments of elastic humor and absurd scenarios. The show balanced Plastic Man's shape-shifting abilities with family-friendly comedy, giving viewers a lighthearted take on superhero adventures that contrasted sharply with the more serious tone of other DC properties. The series distinguished itself through relentless one-liners and physical comedy that pushed the boundaries of what animated rubber could do on screen. On the positive side, the show's commitment to pure entertainment and its willingness to embrace silliness created genuinely funny moments that worked for younger audiences. The voice acting brought energy to the proceedings, and the creative team found inventive ways to use Plastic Man's powers for visual gags. However, the show's impact paled compared to other superhero offerings of the decade, and its comedy-first approach meant it lacked the dramatic stakes that made shows like Super Friends more memorable. The character never achieved the cultural penetration of Batman or Superman, relegating this series to a footnote in animation history. While it provided solid weekend morning entertainment, the Plastic Man comedy Towering Adventure Show represents the lighter, less consequential end of 1970s superhero cartoons. Fun while it lasted, but ultimately forgettable. But speaking of divisive additions to beloved franchises, one show introduced a character that split fans down the middle: Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo. Premiering on September 22, 1979, ABC gambled on injecting new energy into the mystery formula by introducing Scooby's pint-sized nephew Scrappy-Doo across 16 episodes. The production team faced a franchise running out of steam and attempted to revitalize it through family dynamics and a more action-oriented approach. Scrappy's puppy power catchphrase and fearless attitude directly contrasted with his uncle's cowardice, creating new comedic possibilities and theoretically appealing to a younger demographic. The Light show successfully extended the franchise's commercial viability and kept Scooby-Doo relevant as the decade closed. The addition of family elements gave the writers fresh material to mine, and some viewers appreciated the more energetic pacing. Yet the character of Scrappy became one of animation's most polarizing figures, with critics arguing his bravado undermined the original formula's charm, and his constant yapping grated on nerves. Many longtime fans considered Scrappy an unwelcome intrusion into a winning formula, and the character's divisiveness became so pronounced that his name became shorthand for poorly conceived franchise additions. The show's creative decisions, while commercially successful in the short term, arguably diluted what made Scooby-Doo special in the first place. This entry represents a franchise at a creative crossroads, choosing revitalization over preservation with mixed results. Meanwhile, another show was modernizing a character who'd been punching villains since the 1930s, Laugh-A-Lympics. ABC launched this ambitious crossover on September 10, 1977, assembling Hanna-Barbera's entire character stable for Olympic-style competitions across 24 episodes. The premise pit teams like the Yogi Yahooies, Scooby-Doobies, and Really Rottens against each other in absurd athletic events that parodied everything from track and field to more fantastical challenges. The show capitalized on the ensemble comedy trend of the era, while serving as a celebration of Hanna-Barbera's decade-plus dominance in Saturday morning animation. Viewers could spot favorite characters from dozens of different shows competing alongside each other, creating a proto-crossover universe concept. The show's energy and sheer volume of characters kept things moving, and the sports parody angle resonated with audiences in an era of Olympic fever. The variety of events prevented monotony, and the competitive structure provided clear narrative stakes each episode. However, the format's reliance on shallow characterization meant most personalities got reduced to single traits, and the repetitive structure grew tiresome across a full season. Critics noted the show functioned more as a commercial for Hanna-Barbera's back catalog than as compelling television in its own right. The lack of character development or ongoing storylines limited its rewatchability. Compared to shows with stronger narratives, Laugh-A-Lympics represents peak corporate synergy, entertaining enough but ultimately more interested in brand management than storytelling innovation. But one show combined brand recognition with genuinely exciting character dynamics in prehistoric packaging: Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. Debuting on ABC September 10, 1977, this series blended Scooby-Doo's mystery format with wacky prehistoric action across 40 segments. The premise featured a caveman superhero, frozen for millennia and thawed by modern teen detectives, who helped solve crimes with his club and improbable gadgets pulled from his fur. The show rode the mystery-solving trend while adding its own anarchic energy through Captain Caveman's Captain Yavman, battle cry, and the sheer chaos he brought to investigations. The juxtaposition of prehistoric man meeting 1970s sensibilities created natural comedy, and the show embraced absurdity in ways more grounded series couldn't. Voice actor Mel Blanc brought his legendary talent to the title character, giving him memorable vocal quirks that elevated the material. The Teen Angels provided competent straight woman energy, and the show's willingness to get genuinely ridiculous distinguished it from more formulaic competitors. Yet the show never escaped Scooby-Doo's shadow, and many viewers considered it a lesser imitation rather than its own entity. The formula became predictable quickly. Mystery appears, Captain Caveman causes chaos, teens solve the actual puzzle, limiting dramatic possibilities. The show's underdog status means it lacks the cultural footprint of bigger franchises, and contemporary viewers might find its humor dated. Captain Caveman represents solid mid-tier 1970s animation, competently executed, occasionally inspired, but ultimately overshadowed by the very shows it sought to emulate. Speaking of overshadowed, one show took a classic cat and mouse duo and softened them for family viewing: the all-new Popeye Hour. CBS modernized the spinach-eating sailor on September 9, 1978, producing 58 episodes that adapted Popeye's violence-heavy antics for contemporary broadcasting standards. The show maintained Popeye's core appeal, the underdog gaining strength through spinach to rescue olive oil from Bluto, while incorporating health tips and toning down the more aggressive slapstick. This iteration represented a conscious effort to preserve a beloved character while acknowledging changing attitudes about what children should watch. The show successfully introduced Popeye to a new generation, maintaining the character's humor and charm even with softened edges. The animation quality remained solid, and the decision to structure it as an hour-long program gave the creative team room for variety. Voice work captured the essence of the originals, and the nautical setting provided evergreen storytelling possibilities. However, longtime fans noticed the watered-down violence reduced the cartoon's anarchic appeal, and the moralizing health segments felt preachy compared to the theatrical short's pure entertainment focus. The show couldn't escape comparisons to the superior Fleischer Studios originals, and the constraints of 1970s television animation meant it lacked the fluidity and creativity of its predecessors. The educational components, while well-intentioned, dated quickly and interrupted narrative flow. The all-new Popeye Hour represents respectful adaptation rather than innovation, necessary to keep the character alive but unable to recapture the magic that made Popeye a cultural icon decades earlier. But one show didn't just adapt, it completely reinvented what a teenage witch could be. Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Premiering September 12, 1970 as part of the Archie Comedy Hour on CBS, this show brought Archie Comics' magical character to television through lighthearted fantasy about a young witch navigating high school alongside supernatural mishaps. The series balanced typical teenage concerns with magical complications, creating a template that would influence fantasy teen shows for decades. Sabrina's attempts to keep her powers secret while dealing with bumbling ants and her talking cat, Salem, generated consistent comedy through the clash of mundane and magical. The show successfully translated the comics' charm to animation, maintaining character dynamics while expanding storytelling possibilities through the visual medium. The premise offered endless creative possibilities, and the show delivered family-friendly entertainment that worked across age groups. Its integration into the broader Archie universe provided crossover appeal and built-in audience familiarity. The show's influence extended far beyond the 1970s, directly inspiring the successful 1990s live-action adaptation and subsequent reboots. Yet the show never quite escaped its status as an Archie spin-off rather than its own entity, and the magical elements sometimes felt underdeveloped compared to what later iterations would accomplish. The animation. Limitations of early 1970s. Saturday morning television meant the show couldn't fully realize its visual potential, and the episodic nature prevented character growth. The show represented solid foundational work that others would improve upon rather than being definitive itself. Sabrina planted seeds for future fantasy success, but remained a modest entry in the larger Archie empire. Meanwhile, martial arts fever was about to hit Saturday mornings in the most ridiculous way possible. Hong Kong Phooey. ABC unleashed this kung fu comedy on September 7, 1974. Across 16 episodes that parodied martial arts films during Bruce Lee's cultural dominance, the show featured Penrod Pooch, a mild-mannered police janitor who transformed into the bumbling superhero Hong Kong Phooey, fighting crime with accidental success while his cat Spot did the actual work. The timing capitalized perfectly on kung fu's mainstream breakthrough, offering kid-friendly parody that introduced martial arts tropes to younger audiences. Scatman Crothers' voice work elevated the material considerably, bringing warmth and energy to the title character that made his incompetence endearing rather than frustrating. The show's commitment to slapstick and absurd gadgets created genuinely funny moments, and the reversal of expectations, the hero bumbles while the sidekick succeeds, provided consistent comedy. The show became a cult favorite, maintaining affection among viewers who grew up with it and appreciate its historical moment capturing Kung Fu mania. However, modern viewers might find the show's cultural appropriation problematic, and the show's humor relied heavily on the protagonist's incompetence, which wore thin across a season. The limited animation meant action sequences lacked the dynamism needed to truly satisfy, and the formula's repetitiveness limited rewatchability. The show functioned more as a time capsule of 1970s pop culture than as timeless entertainment, requiring historical context to fully appreciate. Hong Kong Phooey represents inspired parody that worked for its moment but struggles outside that context, amusing nostalgia rather than enduring comedy. But one show needed no cultural moment to justify its existence, just a cat, a mouse, and generations of built-in goodwill. The Tom and Jerry Show. ABC revived the legendary cat and mouse duo on September 6, 1975, producing 48 segments that adapted the violent theatrical shorts for family television. This iteration fundamentally altered the dynamic, often having Tom and Jerry work together rather than against each other, while drastically reducing the physical comedy that defined the originals. The show represented a necessary evolution, acknowledging that 1940s violence wouldn't fly in 1970s broadcasting while attempting to preserve what made the characters beloved. The production maintained high-quality animation relative to Saturday morning standards, and the decision to preserve the largely dialogue-free format honored the original's visual storytelling. The show successfully introduced Tom and Jerry to a new generation who might never see the theatrical shorts, serving an important archival function. Some episodes successfully found comedy in the characters' reluctant partnership, and the creative team occasionally delivered clever situational humor worthy of the franchise. Yet the violence reduction neutered much of what made Tom and Jerry special. The elaborate schemes, painful failures, and anarchic energy couldn't translate to a sanitized format. Purists considered this a diluted imitation, and the show's attempts to be both faithful and acceptable to contemporary standards satisfied neither goal completely. The episodic nature and lack of character development meant the show felt repetitive even within its single season. The Tom and Jerry Show represents honorable compromise. Better to exist in diminished form than not exist at all, but impossible to separate from the superior original's shadow. Speaking of franchises that dominated through persistence, one show was busy cementing a mystery formula's eternal appeal. Josie and the Pussycats. CBS launched this Hanna-Barbera production on September 12, 1970, delivering 16 episodes that blended rock music, mystery solving, and groovy 1970s aesthetics into a cultural touchstone. The show followed an all-girl rock band encountering mysteries during their tours, mixing Scooby-Doo's formula with musical performances and espionage elements. The series broke significant ground by featuring Valerie, the first black female lead character in Saturday morning cartoons, addressing representation years before it became industry standard. The show generated actual hit songs that appeared on real Billboard charts, demonstrating rare crossover success between animation and music industries. The Archie Comics source material provided solid character dynamics, and the decision to frame mysteries around band tours created natural variety in settings and scenarios. The show's fashion and music captured 1970s youth culture authentically, giving it genuine cultural cash beyond mere cartoon entertainment. However, the show's 16-episode run meant it never reached the cultural saturation of longer-running franchises, and the Scooby-Doo comparisons, while inevitable, sometimes overshadowed its distinct identity. The musical elements, while innovative, sometimes felt shoehorned into mystery plots, and the songs themselves varied in quality. The show's progressive casting deserves celebration, but the writing didn't always give Valerie material worthy of her groundbreaking status. Josie and the Pussycats represents important progress and solid entertainment that punched above its weight class. Culturally significant, even if not creatively definitive, but one show extended a beloved science fiction universe in ways that would influence canon for decades. Challenge of the Super Friends. ABC elevated the Super Friends formula on September 9, 1978, across 16 episodes that introduced the Legion of Doom and delivered epic superhero battles previously unseen in Saturday morning animation. This iteration upgraded production values, character development, and dramatic stakes, giving viewers genuine comic book adaptation rather than watered-down superhero content. The show's decision to create a rogues gallery that matched the heroes in power and personality added ongoing narrative tension absent from earlier Super Friends seasons. The series introduced diverse heroes, including Black Vulcan and Apache Chief, expanding representation in superhero animation, even if the execution sometimes relied on stereotypes. The show's influence on modern DC animation cannot be overstated. It established templates for team dynamics and villain organizations that creators still reference. The production maintained impressive animation quality for the era, and the serialized elements created actual investment in ongoing conflicts. Voice acting captured characters' essences, and the show took superheroes seriously in ways that honored the source material. Yet the show's attempt attempts at diversity, while progressive for the time, featured characters created specifically for the show rather than from comic canon, and some characterizations bordered on offensive by contemporary standards. The limitations of 1970s television meant the show couldn't deliver the action its premise promised, and the need to resolve conflicts in 22 minutes prevented deep storytelling. The show represents a significant leap forward for superhero animation that laid groundwork for future successes, while remaining constrained by its era's limitations. Meanwhile, one show was teaching citizenship and grammar through methods that would outlast nearly everything else from the decade. Star Trek, the animated series. NBC brought the Enterprise crew back on September 8, 1973, delivering 22 episodes of animated science fiction that continued the original series' mission with the live-action cast providing voices. The show maintained Star Trek's commitment to thoughtful science fiction, exploring ethical dilemmas and alien cultures with the intelligence that made the franchise beloved. Episodes like Yesteryear delved into Spock's backstory in ways that influenced official canon, demonstrating the show's legitimate place in Trek continuity rather than dismissible spin-off status. The animated format allowed for alien designs and planetary environments impossible with 1960s live-action budgets, expanding Star Trek's visual universe considerably. The show earned a Daytime Emmy and maintained the franchise's presence during the gap between the original series and the motion picture. Writer Dorothy Fontana and other original series veterans ensured the show honored established characterization and themes. The episodes tackled serious science fiction concepts with respect for audience intelligence rare in children's programming. However, the animation quality, while acceptable for the era, couldn't match the dramatic weight the stories deserved, and the limited animation techniques reduced action sequences to static shots. The show's Saturday morning slot meant it couldn't explore darker themes as thoroughly as the live-action series, and some storylines felt rushed in the 22-minute format. The show exists in a curious limbo, too sophisticated for typical cartoons, but too constrained for true Star Trek. The animated series represents admirable ambition that succeeded more than it failed, preserving a beloved franchise while expanding its mythology in ways that would be validated decades later. But one show didn't need science fiction grandeur. It revolutionized learning through simplicity in song. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. Bill Cosby brought this groundbreaking series to CBS on September 9, 1972, delivering 110 episodes of educational entertainment focused on inner-city black kids learning life lessons through everyday adventures. The show tackled serious issues including bullying, peer pressure, health, and poverty with age-appropriate sensitivity and genuine emotional resonance. The series broke new ground in representation, centering black characters and perspectives in ways Saturday morning television rarely attempted. Cosby's "Hey, hey, hey" catchphrase and the show's live-action bookends where he addressed audiences directly created a distinctive format that blended entertainment with explicit moralizing. The show earned widespread praise for positive messages and diverse casting, influencing educational programming's approach to social issues. The animation captured urban environments authentically, and the characters displayed individual personalities beyond stereotypes. The show's willingness to address real problems facing its target audience demonstrated respect for children's intelligence and capacity for understanding complex issues. However, Cosby's subsequent criminal convictions and revealed behavior cast an unavoidable shadow over the show's legacy, complicating modern appreciation and making reruns uncomfortable for many viewers. The show's educational focus sometimes resulted in heavy-handed moralizing that prioritized message over entertainment, and the animation quality, while serviceable, never impressed technically. The show's specific cultural context, while its strength, sometimes limited broader appeal. Fat Albert represents the complicated intersection of groundbreaking achievement and tarnished legacy, undeniably important and influential, yet impossible to separate from its creator's destroyed reputation. Speaking of shows that transcended their origins, one offering assembled DC's finest into an unprecedented superhero team. Super Friends. Hanna-Barbera and ABC united Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman on September 8, 1973, creating the template for team superhero animation that would influence DC properties for decades. The show introduced young audiences to DC's premier heroes working together against common threats, pioneering the Justice League concept in animation years before it would dominate comics and film. Early seasons included teen sidekicks Wendy, Marvin, and Wonder Dog for audience identification, though later iterations would phase them out for more action-oriented approaches. The show evolved across multiple seasons and incarnations, each refining the formula and increasing dramatic stakes. The production established superhero team dynamics, different powers complementing each other, personality conflicts creating drama, villains requiring cooperation to defeat that became standard for ensemble hero shows. The series introduced millions of children to DC characters who might never pick up a comic, serving crucial gateway function for the larger franchise. The show demonstrated remarkable longevity, spawning numerous sequel series and maintaining Saturday morning presence for most of the decade. However, early seasons suffered from excessive moralizing and limited action, with heroes often teaching lessons rather than fighting villains. The animation quality, while acceptable, couldn't match the epic scale the premise demanded, and budget constraints meant many episodes involved minimal actual superheroing. The inclusion of ethnic heroes in later seasons, while progressive, resulted in characters that haven't aged well in their cultural representation. Super Friends represents foundational work that established a subgenre, imperfect in execution but undeniably influential in its impact on superhero animation's development. Yet one show managed to educate more effectively than anything else the decade produced, through 3-minute segments that generations still remember. The Scooby-Doo Show. ABC solidified the franchise's eternal appeal on September 11, 1976, across 40 episodes that perfected the mystery formula and cemented Scooby-Doo's place in pop culture permanence. This iteration represented the franchise hitting its stride, the gang's dynamic fully developed, the monster unmasking formula refined to addictive precision, and production values elevated from earlier seasons. The show delivered the definitive Scooby-Doo experience, balancing genuinely spooky atmosphere with comedy from Scooby and Shaggy's cowardice. Guest stars and celebrity appearances added variety while maintaining formula consistency, and the show's haunted locations provided endless creative possibilities. The series understood its formula's appeal and delivered it reliably. Mystery appears, gang investigates, Scooby and Shaggy stumble into clues while fleeing monsters, villain unmasked. I would have gotten away with it too. The show's episodic nature meant viewers could jump in anywhere, and the consistent quality meant they'd rarely be disappointed. The franchise's cultural penetration reached saturation point during this era, with Scooby-Doo becoming shorthand for mystery cartoons generally. The show demonstrated remarkable staying power, remaining in reruns and spawning endless sequels, movies, and reboots. However, the formula's very perfection created limitations. Predictability became monotony across 40 episodes, and the show rarely surprised viewers who'd seen even a handful of episodes. The conservative approach prioritized commercial success over creative risk, and the show's unwillingness to develop characters or serialized elements limited dramatic potential. The show represents the peak of a particular approach to animation, commercially successful, broadly appealing, but ultimately safe. The Scooby-Doo Show delivered exactly what audiences expected with professional competence, securing the franchise's immortality while sacrificing innovation for reliability. But one show managed to be both innovative and educational, creating 3-minute masterpieces that would outlast nearly everything else from the decade. Schoolhouse Rock. ABC revolutionized educational entertainment on January 6, 1973, through musical shorts that taught grammar, math, history, and civics via unforgettable songs and clever animation. The interstitial series aired between shows, rather than as its own program, delivering 3-minute lessons that made learning genuinely fun through catchy melodies and creative visuals. Conjunction Junction, I'm Just a Bill, 3 is a Magic Number, and dozens of other segments became embedded in American cultural consciousness, with generations still singing lyrics decades later. The show's innovative approach, animation serving education rather than education interrupting entertainment, proved remarkably effective, with students learning concepts from the songs that traditional classroom instruction failed to convey. The series earned multiple Emmy Awards recognizing its creative achievement and educational value. The songs themselves succeeded as legitimate music, memorable enough that adults who learned from them as children still recall every word. The show covered an impressive range of subjects from basic multiplication to constitutional amendments, all with equal creativity and intelligence. Teachers still use these segments in classrooms, demonstrating their enduring educational utility beyond nostalgia value. The show respected children's intelligence while making complex concepts accessible, threading the needle between condescension and confusion. The production values remained consistently high, with varied animation styles keeping the format fresh across subjects. The show influenced educational programming's approach for decades, proving that learning content could be engaging without sacrificing educational rigor. Its impact on American education and culture cannot be overstated. Millions learned how laws are made, proper grammar usage, and multiplication tables exclusively from the these 3-minute segments, the show transcended its format, becoming genuine education rather than mere edutainment. Schoolhouse Rock represents the 1970s cartoon landscape's greatest achievement: entertainment that educated, art that taught, and creativity that shaped how generations understood fundamental concepts. Where other shows from the decade faded into nostalgia or dated themselves through cultural specificity, Schoolhouse Rock remains timeless, relevant, and genuinely useful. The series proved that the best children's programming respects its audience, that education and entertainment need not conflict, and that sometimes the smallest packages deliver the biggest impact. That wraps up this video. For more interesting videos like this, check out the cards on your screen.